Okay, the next one is the largest of the the 7 that I'm talking about today. It's called Greenwood Town Cemetery. So this one is not this one was for the community, for Greenwood is now really considered a city, not really a town. But back then it was, when they did it, it was a town. And you see the total number of graves are 846. So it's good, and they're still using that cemetery.
Yeah, because I have family out there, and so it would be a larger number than that, wouldn't it?
Well, now and some people get the two, there's the Greenwood in Shreveport, one on Stoner, and then this one.
Yeah, I'm talking about the one in Green.
In Green, yeah. Yeah, this one there, well, this is fairly up to date, but they are using both the white and the black section. I think there are burials there that are.
Because I had a sister-in-law buried there this year.
Yeah, they're still there. And you see the earliest burial was 1840. There's the entrance, that's the old gate, the old archway. They've changed it. I don't know why. I thought that looked good. I don't have a photo of the new archway, but it doesn't. In fact, the new archway, unfortunately, they misspelled cemetery. A lot of people misspelled. They put T-A-R-Y at the end.
I had an uncle that was a welder, and they had him go put a big bag up to misspelled cemetery. He had to go cut it out, redo it.
So
Slim.
So there's not, and if you notice, this fence right here, and then a fence going this way. That fence going that way is the dividing line. It keeps on going. It's the dividing line between the white section and the black section.
So the black would be on this side of the fence?
It would be on this side.
Yeah.
So before you wouldn't go through the arch.
They go black head, right?
This.
What?
So you can see there's a historic marker for Greenwood. It mentions some of the people buried there, like Dr. Alfred Flournoy. I'm going to mention him in a minute. Dr. J.B. Wise and Judge David Cresswell. Also, the Secretary of State his name was Hull, Secretary of State Hull under Roosevelt. Now he's not buried there, but his brother named Orestes Hull is buried.
Interesting spelling of Franklin D. Roosevelt here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Rose. Yeah, you're right.
They were talking. Yeah, Florida, right.
So here's how you get to that one. Greenwood is, this is Highway 169 that goes to Morgansport. Here's I-20. So you go up here, I think there's some railroad tracks. Anyway, there's Cemetery Road. You take it and it curves down, and then it curves to Greenwood Cemetery Road, and then take that, and then it goes straight into the cemetery. And I think somewhere in that area, someone's telling me, I don't know exactly where it is where Boot Hills Speedway is. Okay, Dr. Alfred Flournoy, he's the patriarch of all the Flournoys. He was the first one to come here. He was born in Virginia, Powhatan, Virginia. Then he moved to Nashville. He was in the War of 1812. done a lot of research on the War of 1812 veterans, and he was, during the War of 1812, he was fighting some of the, we weren't just, the U.S. wasn't just fighting the British, but we also during that time period fighting some of the Native Americans. And so Alfred Flournoy was fighting, I don't know what tribe it was, but he ended up getting hit in the leg. They had to amputate his leg. It turns out that, I mentioned he lived in Nashville. He was great friends with Andrew Jackson, General Andrew Jackson. So when Andrew Jackson found out that Alfred had lost his leg and needed to recuperate, he sent his wife all the way from Tennessee. She came down, I think he was in the Florida area where he'd been wounded. She came all the way down, got him, brought him back to Nashville to recuperate.
They drug him all over the country.
How did she
And then
take him?
So she probably had to buy a wagon.
Covered
Took care of
wagon.
You have those Louisiana. Let me ask you a question. I just noticed, how long did the War of 1812 last?
It lasted till 1815.
So he was a teenager when he was a veteran.
He was,
96,
yeah, 96, he was,
12, he would have
Right.
been 16.
yeah, during, and I think that, I don't know when it was he was wounded.
He was a teenage son.
But still, at the most, it was, yeah, it was just, you know, not more than 20.
Did he become a doctor after that?
Yeah.
You did.
Here's another doctor buried there. This Dr. Samuel Nixon died in 1840, and that's the oldest mark. Well, you can tell that's not an old marker. But they do know that that's, I guess, where he was buried, and they replaced maybe an older one.
Can I ask, who paid for these modern, I mean, I know there's not this original monument. Did the families?
Probably some descendants. If not descendants, then there is a Greenwood. There's a Greenwood historical group, and they collected money for that. In the black section, this is one of the most interesting markers. It's an obelisk-shaped one. You can see Henrietta Sibley. It says, if you look at the dates, she was 116 when she passed away. Well, I checked on that, and it looks like she was fairly old when she died, but the census records, she died in 1900. She's on the census of 1900, and it says that she was born 1794. So
That's just 84.
84. So she probably over 100, but probably more like 106.
Can you tell what was written on the bottom of her plate?
Let's see.
Because it says age.
You are remembered by loved ones.
And then at the bottom it says, your remedy?
I think it's,
You are.
and then remember, they had to do it,
You're
remembered by loved ones.
I don't read it.
And the next one, McMillan Cemetery. There's about 19 graves there. The earliest burial, 1849. This one is out close to the intersection of Jewella and Mansfield Road. Well, I'm sorry, a little further down Mansfield. between, on Mansfield Road, between the Inner Loop and Burt Coons. And I'll show you where it is. And you can see here, it says it was a big complex at one time. There's a barn. The house stood off, this would be on the west side of Mansfield Road. It's about 150 miles back from the road. It was still, you could still see some of those buildings back in the 1960s, and then they started having more businesses and sold some of that land. It was McMillan's came. Archibald Blue McMillan was the first one who came of the McMillan clan, and he was from North Carolina. He was a War of 1812 veteran also. And what's interesting is, even though he died in 1869, there's not a marker for him. There should be. The cemetery's really named after his was a patriarch, but there's not a marker. But he's buried in there for sure. Here's where it's located. Here's Mansfield Road. Here's a Popeyes. Here's Chase Bank. This is the Armed Forces Recruiting Center. And what they did is, the cemetery is not in the original location. They moved it some. The U.S. government wanted to have the recruiting center in that area, and so they got hold of the McMillan descendants and bought the property, and they said they would make sure there was a little enclosed thing so they moved the graves a little bit, and it's in a nice enclosure, but they're not in it's not in the exact same place where it was. Archibald Blue McMillan owned a lot of property in that area, and supposedly he owned the land where South Park Mall was built. This shows part of one of the it's Marion McMillan, that was one of his sons, and one of Archibald's sons, who was born in 1832. One more thing about Archibald Blue, his father, his family came from Moore County, North Carolina, and they were Scottish. And Archibald Blue knew Gaelic, and he wrote poetry, both English and Gaelic. And some of his descendants in Texas, they have copies of his original, some of his Gaelic poetry. So Marion was born in Rapides Parish. They were down there in Rapides before coming up further north. And there's a photo of Marion. I looked to see if he was in the Civil War. I couldn't find him. He'd be about the right age, about 30, early 30s, but I couldn't see a service record. And what they did when they did that armed forces recruiting, they made a big giant marker. You can see part of it there, where they put the names of some of the other markers and put them all on there. This one at the top, Charles Graves. It's a little pixelated, but Charles Graves that's the oldest death date in that cemetery.
That was the 1949.
Yeah, he died in 49, and he was born in Oglethorpe County, Georgia in 1796.